Recently, I've been seeing these old school debunking videos pop up on my feeds again, and this one actually hits really hard. A 2020 re-upload of a video talking about or breaking down what the British did to India, and basically calling BS on the idea that the Raj was just endless looting, genocide and destruction. Claims like 45 trillion stolen, Bengal famine was a deliberate mass murder, or the British deindustrialising India to prop up its own factories. The video says nah to this narrative. British rule actually grew India's economy, literacy shot up, and the population exploded, and a lot of the problems were internal feudal crap or war related. It's got that raw data dumping style that even makes you nod or rage, and especially in 2026, with all the lies told about the British Empire with the narratives, and with migration debates raging in India-UK ties in the spotlight, this feels timely as hell. So today we're going to be analysing this video, or that was a re-upload back in 2020, with what the British did to India by the alt-hype, or Ryan Faulk as he's actually known, and it's a long-form video takedown of anti-British empire myths, arguing that the Raj wasn't the monster it's painted as, and that India's post-independent struggles came from sticking to traditional economic traps than colonial theft. And I feel like, especially because this narratives that still fuel politics to this day, reparations talk, migration resentment, and even how we view British identity, I'll actually take my chances here and also be able to call out the data and tie it with today's UK scene. So the main claims that this video debunks, and why they feel like a gut punch to the usual story that we're all told about the British Empire, the video structures around 4 big accusations: deindustrialisation, genocide, famines, de-education, and wealth looting. To do with deindustrialisation, what mainstream British history actually says, it says that it actually crushed India's textile industry, with 25% global share to 4%, killing handloom jobs. But the video actually counters with numbers. Machine-spun cloth production rose to about 9 times from 1880 to 1929, and handspun was about 3.5 times. Clothing prices halved by 1871. Britain's cotton came mostly actually from US, Brazil and Egypt, not India, which was only about 1.7%. Steel production went from 0 to 443 kilotons by year, and by 1930, it argues that India specialises in agriculture but still grew overall, not destruction but transition. And there was just to do with the whole genocide and famines. The population boomed under British rule from 150 to 200 million pre-1800s to about 389 million by 1941. The Bengal 1943 famine killed about 4 million, not actually billions as some exaggerated, and Ryan Volk actually talks about these were actually caused from actual drought, cyclone crop disease, plus war and inflation and hoarding, entitlements failure, Amartya Sen's theory, not a deliberate starvation. And to do with Churchill's quotes, "Why hasn't Gandhi died yet?" get called out as bad, but consensus leans non-genocidal. Pre-British famines existed too, to do with the British infrastructure, like helping reduce frequency long term. Then there was to do with the whole de-education, which was that literacy actually rose from 3.25% in 1872 to 1788% in 1948, which was about 5.5 times increased despite the population growth. British spent most education budget on primary schooling. Macaulay wanted elite Angela-sized class, but mass primary pushed happen anyway. With the wealth looting narrative, 45 trillion figure from Utsatnika called impossible. India's GDP couldn't support that drain without starvation, boosted for inflation and trade, closer to around 69 billion at the 2% rate. Indian often had trade surplus. Whether you buy it fully or not, it forces you to think about beyond evil empire memes, and how the video frames the bigger picture, especially to do with the British benefits and the internal Indian issues. To do with the core thesis, India's poverty stemmed from pre-colonial feudal guilds, tariffs, caste spread, and Malthusian traps, not just British extraction. British introduced capitalism, factories, markets, railroads, unified territory politically, preventing a breakup, and later democracy seeds, even if surpassed violent revolutions. Post-1947 issues to do with the poverty until 1990 reforms, blamed on sticking to traditional socialism or protectionism, not colonial scars. It warns that grape and revenge myths, like Hitler's Versailles grudge, fuel ultra-nationalism and conflict, but to do with the balanced view that he gives, exploitation happened, but net effects were neutral, positive compared to alternatives. And then this brings us to 2026 UK politics, and the reason why this matters is because that with immigration as a top issue, Reform UK pushing hard on borders, and India-UK ties to with trade deals and dysphoria in focus, these old empire debates still simmer. Videos like this actually push back on the guilt-tripping narratives that fuel reparations or resentment politics. It also criticises how the modern left or progressive takes exaggerate colonial evil to justify open borders or cultural self-flagellation, while right-wingers use it to defend British identity. And I think when he actually talks about this, especially to do with Ryan Volk and to do with balls in your face wrong type of thing that he does, which I think it really does fit the style. And as well, I love the unfiltered detail and the immersion that talks about, especially because it risks downplaying the real harms of famines and racism. But I think that when it comes down to this, the truth is messy, and empire wasn't pure good or evil. Just using history for today's agendas often distorts both sides. And when it comes down to the Bengal famine section is the most controversial, especially to do with entitlements versus deliberate policy, left digging into a matter send for balance. And this kind of content gets suppressed or called hate speech online, especially when it shows how historical debates get politicized today. Anyway, hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video about me talking about to do with how India was colonized by the British, and also to do with the counter narratives and to do with what Ryan Volk talks about. And I think he also did mention that to do with steel, that India actually didn't produce a lot of the steel. It actually came, or at least when where British actually colonized India, they actually created all of the railroads, and they said that, oh, well, they actually built it for themselves. And it's like, so what? They built the railroads for themselves, but if anything, they're still used to this day when, for example, the British Empire collapsed, India managed to keep the railroads even after they were built by the British. And obviously to do with that narrative that, the evil capitalists came in, or the evil British Empire. But I do think that, we gave a lot of back to India, and I think that the whole reparations narrative, especially to do with Africa, I do think that some of it does highlight the injustices. I do think that if you were to, let's say, if we stole an artifact from, Africa, we could probably just give it back to the Africans and then basically just replace it with a fake. I think that's also a good idea, but I do think these type of reparations where we basically advocate for open borders is kind of just dumb, and that we shouldn't just invite them in just because, we took less stuff or something. But yeah, again, these debates get really childish, I do think, and that usually these people cannot be argued or reasoned with, but I do think especially to do with not having just past grievances as a justification for the genocide of your own people. And as well, if you want to click on these videos here where I've talked about other topics like this, and as well to do with all of the, history narratives, I talk about those a little bit more in detail. And before I click on this video, I actually have links to my other channels and also to do with my Discord as well.